Rowan is doing the presentation and I'm chirping in. That's how it's going to work.
Awesome, awesome.
Okay.
Cool. So we're all recording, all ready to roll. Well, welcome to the guys here, everyone else in the checking out the recording. Today really excited to have a bit of a chat. And yeah, dive into a little bit of Allie's training and journey because we were talking about it before and we're like, you know what, we always sort of see the end result, Allie doing these super cool things out in the world, and like you see her, with this and that, and she does a really cool job of like storytelling her adventures, but we never really explored the training side of things a little bit. So we thought it'd be a cool idea to kind of come on and have a little bit of a chat. So kind of how it's all going to be working is I'm going to take us through a bit of a presentation. I've got to spit a lot of stuff I'm going to be talking about with Allie's training, how we're looking at it, how we're approaching it. There's going to be little periods where Allie's going to kind of share her experiences with the training and this and that. And then as we come through, basically, depending on how we go for time, I've got a ton of stuff. I want to be crazy with the presentation, so hope it doesn't take too long. But if you are any questions that do pop up throughout this, just pop them in the chat. If we've got time at the end, I will cover them, or we will cover them, I should say, at the end. Alternatively, if we don't quite have enough time, then we will just do a separate video and send it all out to people afterwards. So we'll see how we go. So before I get into things, anything else you wanna add, Allie?
Nope. Sounds good, Rowan. You're the one who's done all of the hard yards. So I'm
All
just
good.
gonna So for me, just a little bit of very short backstory. I never used to do a structured training program until 2022. Was it, Rowan? I've
I
done
think
550 workouts or something, and I can't figure out when it was.
I figured it out. 2019 was when we started.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so it's been a long time, but in sort of seriousness for this project, I would say that's when we really kicked into like a very specific kind of routine. But I mean, anyway, I didn't do any specific training, like I would say like formal training prior to working with Rowan. I just used to, and including like when I climbed Everest, I just went running out in the bush. I used to carry a backpack full of water in and out of the Gross Valley, and I didn't do a lot of strength training, and consequently, I always had a knee injury. Since working with Rowan, however, I have had way less injuries, and yeah, so I've definitely got stronger. And I can't even compare. Like just a consistent routine and having someone like changing in the training in terms of the phases leading up to my year, because I'm literally months without training. That's the thing. It's like I have a time to train, and then I start in March, and then I go till October. So that's got to last me the whole time. And yeah, so I can't recommend Rowan enough because it does last me the whole time. I literally just summited an 8,000er on October 9th without oxygen. And I hadn't trained since, like, properly, since the end of April. I hope that's enough for now. A good introduction for you, Rowan. Okay, go ahead, take it away.
All right, let's get into it. So yeah, I've got a bit of presentation. I do love the old slideshows. So yeah, we'll see how we go. And we're going to be basically exploring today, yeah, how we train Allie for big mountains. So a little bit of background for people who are watching this. If you don't haven't come across my stuff before, don't know who I am. My name is Rowan Smith. I'm the founder of Summit Strength, which is an online personal training service specifically designed for hikers and mountaineers. Now, I've been coaching in one way, shape, or form for about 15 years. I've been specializing in hikers and mountaineers since 2017. And basically, I personally trained prepared over 400 hikers and mountaineers for every type of trip imaginable. Over the years since we've been working, not just me these days, we've got a bit of a team behind us, which is super cool. But yes, we've worked with lots and lots of people. Now, as I said, me and Allie have been training together and working together on and off since about 2019 around numerous adventures. And as she said before, super cool. She'd actually ticked off her 537th workout today since we started working together, which she got a little thing in her app about, which is pretty cool. So basically what we're going to be covering today is we're going to be getting a little bit of behind the scenes at Allie's preparations. We're essentially going to be covering sort of how we have approached her particular situation and how we create a sort of personalized approach for Allie, which may look a little bit different from person to person in the old mountaineering world, but how we've gone about, tailoring things for her. We're going to talk about the assessment process we've kind of gone through. We're going to talk through Allie's current training program, her strength, her cardio, her recovery mobility, and also sort of what our plan is into our next adventure and how we'll be progressing things. And then also at the end, we'll just sort of talk through if anyone's interested in getting a bit extra help there's training for mountaineering, how you can find that. So with that being said, let's get into the very, very first step of our programs. And I'm going to kind of talk you through sort of step by step how we go through it all, just so you get a good overview and understand sort of some of the decisions we've made with Allie's training, just so you can get the full context from it all. So basically, anytime anyone comes to start working with us, one of the most important things is making sure we do get enough information to properly tailor programming around the individual. Because one of the issues that we had sort of Allie raised when we first started working, like first chat on the phone years and years and years ago, where she was like, look, I've done a training program before for mountaineering. It was sort of something I bought. It asked me to do lots and lots of stuff, and I just got bored to death. And she was like, I do not want to do this, and yada, yada, yada. So that's the tricky thing with the one-size-fits-all approach with a lot of these training things. We do need to make sure it is personalized to the individual, and we go about that in a few different steps. Now, number one, we go through a bit of an intake questionnaire. So basically, we get everyone to go through questionnaire that covers about 17 questions, going into things like goals, time available to train, equipment access, injury history, preferences, other training or things they want to be doing. Everyone also has an initial conversation with us as well. So we always will make sure we get on a call, a Zoom call, or a phone call, and actually have a proper chat before we start working together, because that is really, really crucial. Now, a few important notes we sort of came out of Allie's intake when we're going through things is we're like, okay, the next big goal that she's preparing for, a big mountain, she has to prepare for, well, as well as you humanly can, 30 plus hours above 7,500 meters, which is obviously a monumental task. So we need to be aware of that. Without oxygen, I should have said yes as well. Also, from the beginning of once she's been back in Australia from the last season and recovered from, had a bit of sickness and illness coming back, she realistically had 18 weeks until she flies out again. Frostbite, yeah. Yeah, better you than me there, Allie, I'll tell you that.
It's a bit hard to train with frostbite on your toes, but they're almost better now, so rock on.
So yeah, realistically, we had about 18 weeks where we were leading up till she flies out again. And realistically, right now, she's in a position where she's got a lot going on. She is a busy lady. It's not like this is training as a full-time job, but she has many other things going on. So realistically, she was like, look, I can really realistically train right now about 4 days a week, probably doing like one long session a week and then sort of 3 sessions that are probably 60 minutes or less. Now, this in itself, this one piece of information, so crucial for us, because already we know this preparation is going to be look a bit different than a lot of other mountaineers who maybe take a bit more of the typical approach. Also, we're aware that, look, she's going to be training mostly in gyms, so she's got a bit of access to stuff. However, there will be a bit of hit and miss of equipment when she does travel, and there may be periods where she doesn't have fully kitted out gyms or whatever it may be, so we need to be aware of that. And also, we need to be aware that, look, she had a little bit of arch pain currently, so a little bit of pain in her feet, and had a previous history of knee pain. So this is all stuff that was really, really important to tailor around. Now, once we got that, the next step we go to get our mountaineers to go through a few simple assessments, just get a little snapshot on kind of where their strength, endurance, and mobility is. The testing process, it's not too serious, it's not the end of the world, but it is useful just to get a good idea of where people are at. And this just helps us hone in our training just to make sure when we put together our sessions, we are going to be working in the right areas and also starting at the right level. Because obviously there's a big, vast array of different strength and mobility levels for a lot of people. So we need to make sure we're doing that. And one of the differences between online training and in-person training is obviously we're not right there with Allie. I'm not watching her doing exercises. So we need to get a good idea on this. Now, essentially, the assessment process we take people through, there's a million and one ways you can go about testing. The ones we use kind of lean more towards the side of simplicity. So we're just going to keep things simple, don't take a huge amount of time. So talking through Allie's, what we went through. First one she went through was what's called a knee to wall assessment. So I'm sure everyone watching online has come across the craze of knees over toes training online. Probably seen a knees over toes guy, probably got bombarded with that online. And those guys harp on and on and on about knees over toes. And I'm not a massive fan. Like, they do some cool stuff. I don't particularly love their full training methodology, but one thing they do, which is really talked about, which is really important, is the ability of your knees to comfortably move over your toes, which is super relevant in the world of hiking, mountaineering, training, in a bunch of different reasons. So essentially this knee to wall assessment kind of looks at that. We do a really simple thing to get a judge on that. When Allie was going through this particular assessment, she scored on 11 centimeters and 12 centimeters. We get her to do a little assessment, measure it. That gets us a good idea. And coming off those scores based off the benchmarks we had, we were like, you know what, ankle dorsiflexion, pretty good. And that's really useful to know in the history of knee pain and foot pain, because if this was restricted, we were like, you know what, we need to hammer this home to help with the feet and the knees before she gets back in the mountains. But she's looking there pretty good, which is great. Now, the next one she went through was a single leg rise assessment, which is this one. I've got a little video here, which is working with single leg quadricep strength, so strength through the front of the thighs. So this is a little video here, basically how they're going through the assessment film, which is great. And it's literally as simple as this. You go on a box, knees are about 90 degrees, and you're just going up and down as many times as you can. For Allie, for this one, she scored 40 on the left, 50 on the right, which is a really nice assessment. I'm very happy there. I can't remember what you're saying in that video. I had it muted, but there's something going on. If you were looking at testing this for yourself, this is a nice one you can just bang out at home, and you don't really need to do too much. Literally find a chair or a bench, something that's about 90 degrees at your knees. This chair is probably a little bit high, but something about 90 degrees, and literally just bang out as many as you can on each leg. Typically, the benchmark score for this, we like to use about 22 repetitions on each side. For mountaineers, we kind of sort of say, look, that's kind of a minimum we sort of want to hit. Allie's obviously way above that, so we will keep on moving that forward. But it's something nice to just get a little insight into what's going on. So if you want to test that at home, bang that out, see where you score out. Now, the other assessments she went through.
Just remember it hurts.
Yeah, particularly when you're doing
for like
when you're
3
doing
days,
reps like yours.
by the way. 3 days later, you're going to sit up out of bed and your bum's going to hurt.
Yeah, exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. So yeah, next ones we looked at single leg glute bridge. So we looked at the front of the thighs. Now we will look at the back of the thighs. This looks a little bit of glute and hamstring strength, similar to this picture here. Ali scored a 16 on each side, which is decent. Calf raises, basically banging up and down, looking at the calves, super essential for mountaineers. Often gets like ignored and neglected for whatever reason, the mountaineering community. But we sort of had a look at that. We did a plank assessment, which is, it's not the most technical thing in the world, but it does give us a snapshot in regards to abdominal endurance. We did some push-up assessment, which again, it's not the most technical thing in the world, but gave a little snapshot into upper body pushing strength. We either do a pull-up or an inverted row assessment just to get an idea on pulling strength. Which is sort of sitting at 12 inverted rows. And sometimes we'll do an aerobic capacity assessment where someone will go out and do a little assessment to get a judgment on their just baseline aerobic fitness. In all honesty, this one isn't a big deal for Allie and I. We work together for so long. She's got a really good awareness of where she's at. We don't really need to do this so much, but we'll sometimes get people to bang through that. Now, that's the kind of testing process. What we sort of determined, coming out of that for Allie was like, look, off those assessments, the areas that we were like, hey, kind of probably needs a little bit more focus, particularly in the short time period that we're working on. Single leg hamstring and glute strength, single leg glute and hamstring strength and endurance, definitely going to be a priority. We definitely want to bump that up because it's a little bit lower than kind of what we wanted. The calf strength and endurance wasn't too far off our clearance score, but considering she's got that arch pain, we definitely want to bump that up and get that there. And abdominal endurance was pretty good, but we want to get that up a little bit higher. So they're going to be kind of 3 priorities we're looking at with Allie's training. Now, important notes with the assessment process. Sometimes people do these things, they get really hung up on numbers and this and that. In all honesty, assessments, it's just a snapshot. It's not really, none of this is worrisome. It's not like there's ever pass or fail. It's more just getting an idea of where we're at, a little temperature gauge. Assessments are not the be all end all. And it's really just an idea of just, as I said, getting that snapshot, identifying priorities we want to work on, and also tracking progress. And sometimes people will retest these 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks through the process to see how they're going. For mountaineers, realistically, the most important thing that we want to do is to track progress is their performance on the trails. When they're actually going out and doing, say, their training hikes or their long runs or whatever it may be. That's kind of the main thing. Like, as much as like strength is interesting to know, the end goal is getting better at mountaineering. So that's kind of what we want to look at, as opposed to getting too hung up on these numbers, as useful as they are. Now, some of you may be watching this, and if you are interested in the world of mountaineering, you probably looked at a couple of people who talk about this stuff a lot. And the usual approach when people are starting mountaineering process is putting a big emphasis into testing what they call thresholds. So essentially testing aerobic threshold and lactate threshold, and using that to determine training sessions, intensity guidelines, this and that. In all honesty, the way that we go about things at Summer Strength, we don't really do this. Not to say this stuff is bad, and not to say this stuff isn't useful, but we take a slightly different approach. Compared to the more traditional approaches to endurance training, we don't really put a huge reliance on heart rates. We do track it sometimes, we do use it sometimes, but it's not gospel like a lot of people use it for, and they don't use it like looking at it all the time. So for us, the thresholds isn't super crucial. The reason why we do this is because we manage intensities in slightly different ways, as opposed to like really stressing about the numbers. We'll use breathing targets, or even just using simple heart rate formulas if someone really does like heart rate training. Allie said in the past actually gone and done lab testing to actually get proper numbers on this, as opposed to doing the self-assessments ones. Wasn't essential, but that was quite interesting to get a snapshot and quite useful. On top of that, what we do at Summit Strength is typically try to keep it a little bit less heavy on the metrics. So we try to keep things a little bit more simple, a little bit less numbers you need to track. In all honesty, this type of approaches are much just as effective for the majority of people. Some people prefer numbers, which is totally fine, but there's different ways you can go about it. So just a note on that. Now, once we came through that, we've got all the information, and before we actually get into a training program, now we sort of look at, okay, what are the considerations? Realistically, by the time she got a program in her hand, she had 17 and a half weeks until she's going to fly out. As we said before, 4 sessions in a week, 3 short, 1 long, we can probably fit in. Priorities right now, we want to build as much strength as we can before she flies out, and we want to build aerobic capacity as much as we can, super crucial for mountaineers. We want to manage that arch discomfort and hopefully knock that on the head before she flies out. At the very least, make sure we're not aggravating it. And then also on top of that, the extra personal considerations, as we said, she has a very busy life, there's a lot going on. We also don't want to be in a position where we just overdo the long steady state cardio. In the perfect world, we'd probably say, hey, Allie, go out and hike 3 times a week and rack up all of these hours and do hours after hours after hours. But it's not going to happen realistically. And for Allie's history, also, as for years and years and years of guiding, which she did as a profession, the thought to go ask her to spend all of these hours hiking, it's not going to be super fun for her. So realistically, we like to sort of aim for the running as opposed to hiking for the majority of it, so she can have that enjoyment, that pleasure, and doesn't end up being too much of a burden. And also the consideration is she has lots of travel, so the potential for minimal equipment at times as well. So now we've gone through all of that, we can kind of see, look, there are some particular considerations for Allie's training. So this is going to give you the context for what we're going to go into now, which are actual sessions and how we're going to go about everything. So what have we decided to do, and what I decided to, keep on saying we, but what we sort of put together. In the first phase of training, what we decided to put together are sessions. We're going to do 2 strength sessions, aiming at the gym, working with full body sessions, 60 minutes, which we'll go into in a second. Also, because she's traveling, we decided, look, we're going to have just a backup body weight sessions. So if she is in between gyms, a little bit of limited equipment, she doesn't have to wonder, doesn't have to guess, we'll just have something she can fall onto. We're going to aim for 1 long run a week, where we'll be our longer cardio, which over time we'll build out and try to get some long exposure. And we'll also do a sort of shorter session on the cycling intervals as well, which I'll explain in a moment. But that's kind of the makeup of the session that we're looking at this stage. Now, important note, a lot of people watching this, particularly again, if they've got a background in training for mountaineering, you may be looking at this and be like, that's crazy. Like, Allie's going to go climb a big mountain, no oxygen. That's way less than aerobic training and the typical approach that I would see, and be doing 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount of aerobic training which is recommended here. But in all honesty, when it comes down to it, we need to be super conscious about her schedule. She is really busy, as I said before. And in all honesty, as a coach, I would much prefer her to fit in 4 quality sessions per week and have a happy, positive, and in a good spot, and then just trying to overload her and just be like, well, this just ends up taking over her life. It just ends up impacting things. She misses sessions, ends up in a negative situation. That's not what we want. We want to make sure this is positive, this is quality, and if we can get 4 quality sessions, we can be good. Now, on top of that, Allie does have a bit more leeway here compared to many other mountaineers out there, purely for the fact that she has a long history of endurance activities. The beauty of endurance stuff is we can compound a lot of the development of endurance year after year after year after year, and Allie has a huge history of this type of thing, which is awesome. She's also got a recent history of more regular and long expeditions. She's just coming off a season or expeditions as well, so a lot of that will be retained. And also, when she actually flies over there, she's not doing like a fast acclimatization schedule. She's not going to dive in and start climbing, try like hitting the summit in a week or something. She has a long season. She has a long time. She does it right. There's no shortcuts. So there will be time to kind of get that extra exposure when we're over there. So this does give us a little more leeway in regards to this type of training, which is really, really important to be aware of. As we do get closer to the trip, we'll probably aim to fit in a little bit more and see if we can squeeze in depending on the schedule, but we'll see how we go. So let's break things down. Let's talk about strength. So as I said, there's 2 strength sessions in a week. This is a bit of snapshot in sort of one session we were doing for her. Literally, this is one of the sessions she was doing her first training phase. Now, this is basically a 60-minute session. I'll kind of break it down. On the left side of things is our warm-up. Basically, we're going to look at, we typically do a little bit of mobility to start. In this situation, we're doing some ankle mobility, a bit of hip mobility, a bit of shoulder mobility, just to get things warmed up and away we go. Then typically the way we like to do things is as a warm-up, we'll do a few like smaller, what we call like stability exercises. This is still kind of classified as a warm-up because we're still getting moving. But this is also a good point where we can work on a few of the smaller muscle groups, which sometimes get neglected. So in this situation, we're doing a little bit of glute medius work, which is really, really beneficial for warming up the hips, helping stabilize the knees and a bunch of other things. Doing a little bit of anti-extension work as well, abdominal anti-extension work, which is just helping the abdominals in a particular way, which is really useful. Then essentially go into the crux of the workout. And the way we sort of like to work things is typically full body sessions. So we'll do a little bit of lower body, a little bit of upper body, a little bit of core, a little bit of mobility. In this situation, in this first little section, we've got a series of 4 different exercises. We've got a single leg deadlift variation, which is great for working hamstrings and glutes. We've got a chest press variation, which is great for working a bit of chest, a bit of shoulders, a bit of triceps. We've got a pale-off press variation, which is great for working what's called anti-rotation abdominal strength. And we also got a couch stretch, which is a mobility stretch for the hip flexors and also the quadriceps. Now, in a traditional approach to strength training, and what you'll see, whenever you look up strength training for anything, the traditional approach is we'll sort of do one exercise, then you'll have a rest for like 90 seconds to 2 minutes, do it again, rest, do it again, rest, then move on to your next exercise, and then do that, and do that, and do that. And, that approach works, but it's a bit inefficient at the time. You end up just fapping around for a lot of times, you just sit on your phone playing around. I'm not a big fan of that. The way we sort of work things is we use these things called sequences in regards to we sequence out the order of exercises. So we can sort of feel our periods in where you're usually sitting around with productive stuff. So in this situation, we do a lower body exercise, then we do an upper body exercise, then we do a core exercise, then we do a mobility exercise. Then we basically just go back up to the top and repeat. And the way this works is by the time you actually get back to your leg exercise, you probably had about 2 to 3 minutes rest, if not more, which is what we want for our strength stuff. So we can just flow and flow and flow between the exercises. Then the second half of this, we'll basically do a few barbell box squats, do a few eccentric chin-ups, and some calf raises as well. And as you can see, we've put a lot of emphasis into different tempos and different speeds because that's a little nuance so we can get a lot of extra results. So this is a really, really simple snapshot of what we're looking at least in one of the sessions there. Now, the second session she does in the week will basically complement this workout. So it'll work on the other areas of the body, fill out the gaps that we sort of hit there, and make sure we're covering all our bases that we need. And essentially the plan of this is every 3 weeks, we'll typically update and progress this. And we'll basically just every 3 weeks, just make it a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. Either we will change exercise variations and we'll sort of say, hey, we did this type of exercise in one phase, we'll change it in the next phase, change it in the next phase, or we'll change repetitions and get a bit of emphasis. But basically either way, we're just making sure we're taking step by step by step, making things a little bit harder. Over time, probably the plan, what we're going to be looking at is getting a little bit more what we call polarized, in the sense that the heavier, the strength stuff gets heavier and the endurance stuff gets more endurance. So we'll do lower reps and higher reps, and we'll get a little bit more polarized as we go through and as we get back into things. One important thing or one interesting thing that we sort of look at here is when we are looking at training and planning out this strength work for Allie and most of our mountaineers in general, is we're probably going to keep a thread, both endurance and strength, through the entire program, pretty much all the way up to the final taper before she steps to the plane. Now, what I mean by this is in the traditional approach for mountaineers and the stuff you'll see a lot of people do and talk about is they take the traditional approach where they'll do a base training phase, they'll do a max strength phase, they'll do an endurance phase, and then they'll go on their trip. So, for example, they'll do 8 weeks of doing 10 reps, then 8 weeks doing 4 to 6 reps, and then 8 weeks of doing 15 plus reps, and then head on a trip. And this approach works. It's worked for a lot of people and it can be effective, but we like to keep, as opposed to doing 1, 2, 3. We like to keep the strength and endurance going the whole period around. Purely for the fact that, because Allie does have such a long lead up to the trip, once she actually flies out, it's not like she attempts the summit, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days after, whatever it may be. She's got a bit of a long period up. It is important for us to kind of maintain strength in the final phases. Because realistically, if we take the traditional approach, if we end up spending the last 6 to 8 weeks of our training purely working on endurance, so doing that high repetition stuff and just doing lots and lots of burning stuff without a huge amount of strength stimulus, it might end up being a really, really long stretch before her climb, since she did a lot of strength stuff. And a lot of people sort of just miss the fact that as much as endurance is essential for mountaineers, heavier strength stuff is very, very beneficial for a lot of reasons as well. And if we end up doing the last 6 to 8 weeks of a program working on endurance only, it could end up being, depending on how long she spends over there, could be 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, since she did a last sort of proper strength stimulus before she ends up climbing, which ends up being a bit of counterproductive. Realistically, max strength doesn't disappear overnight. It's not like you lose it in 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, and some endurance work can help sustain this. But personally, the way I like to approach things is just keeping some proper strength stimulus all the way up till she leaves. So she will be doing heavy stuff pretty much until the taper. Now, on top of that, I also like to use this approach because it does give us a little bit more flexibility if things do come up. Because even if we miss a few sessions here and there, it won't compromise the build up of strength or endurance because we're always working that. So if she missed a couple of sessions 1 week and didn't get all the strength or didn't get all the endurance, doesn't matter. And also on top of that, in the last couple of weeks, everyone always tends to get super, super busy. Everyone tends to get sick, and it happens a lot. Sometimes that can get a little bit complicated if we're just trying to really, really get a last little exposure to something at the end. So as long as we keep the rate of strength and endurance the whole way, it doesn't matter too much. Much as it sucks if you get sick, it gives it a bit more leeway. So there's a little bit of nuance in there of how we approach things. And I typically will just do this for all my hikers and mountaineers to kind of make sure, we've got that thread all the way through. So a bit of information there. Strength. Allie, any comments, questions, any discussion on any of that stuff we covered so far, or any insights in regards to your sessions?
I think what is important, and I think in terms of how we prepared for this year and last year, which have been the two biggest mountaineering years of my life, is the strength. And also just my age. I just want to mention that because I'm 49. And once women get over 40, we start to lose muscle. Actually, once we're 35, is it, Rowan? Something like that, mid-30s. Men as well. It just goes away. And if we don't actually do strength training, and it's not even just for mountaineering, we basically can't be our best self because we get more prone to injury. And yeah, I don't like it without it going forward, wanting to do any type of adventure or hiking, that kind of stuff. It's just become way more important. And in the past, I kind of neglected strength training a lot. And like Rowan said, I used to just go out for hours and hours and hours trail running, 6-7 hours carrying a 20-kilo backpack and all that kind of thing. And it just gave me knee pain because I didn't do the structured strength training to maintain my strength in my knees. But the other thing that's super important that has been helpful with Rowan is that people don't realize, but on 8,000ers, if you're climbing, you're essentially using a ascender on a rope, and you're pulling yourself up with your arms. So you do this for thousands and thousands of meters. There's 10 kilometers of this if you climb Everest, just constantly pulling, sliding up an ascender and stepping up. And of course, for me, I don't use that much effort in my arms anymore because I've done so much of it. I'm really efficient. But if you're not efficient and you're just learning, or you haven't done thousands of meters of this stuff, you use your arms. I remember when I first went to Everest in 2011 and I summited in 2011, I was so pumped, like my biceps. I thought I was gonna vomit. I didn't know like how I was gonna make it because my arms were so sore. And yeah, so a lot of the stuff that we do, because you think like, why would you do pull-ups? Like you're just hiking with a pack, you know. But actually, and I have been through times where I've been rock climbing a lot, and of course, like pull-ups are good for rock climbing, but no, pull-ups are really good for climbing 8,000-meter mountains. And don't get me wrong, like you don't have to do like actual pull-ups, because I'm doing, like you saw, eccentric pull-ups at the moment. And then I'll go to a band, and then I actually will do pull-ups. So by the time I get to Nepal, I think like the start of this year, pull-ups are like my nemesis. I don't know if anyone knows about rock climbing. I was climbing like grade 24, which is pretty reasonable. Like, let's face it, if you know about rock climbing, that's a pretty good grade. I'll say 7A for those in Europe. And yeah, so I could climb like overhanging steep stuff, and I could only do one pull-up. That's it. Right? So I'm pretty good with like technique, is what I'm trying to say. And so it's not like you have to do pull-ups. I could only do like one pull-up when I was climbing my strongest. But after training with Rowan, I think like before I went to Nepal at the start of this year, I think I could do 8 in a row, maybe, or maybe 10, which is pretty phenomenal. And the only reason why is because I'm consistent, and he's built it up. You know, like I'm doing eccentric now, and then we'll do like with a band and blah, 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 blah. And then by the time I get there, yeah, I'm just like doing pull-ups. And like for me, like I said, it's been my nemesis. So yeah, it is phenomenal. So that's just the thing I just wanted to mention. Like obviously there's a lot of endurance and a lot of stepping up. And yes, before I started training with Rowan, some of these programs that I was doing by apparently the professional mountaineer training people were literally just stepping up like with a pack on a step, and it was so boring. Like, why would I, when I could go out here in the Blue Mountains and be in nature and carry some water out from a creek, right? Yeah, so I don't get bored. And I'm way, way stronger now on the mountain with my arms. I don't get pumped. I don't get pumped either. So I just wanted to mention that.
Absolutely. Awesome, 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 awesome. And I will admit, I do use those step up sessions for some people when needed. So I am guilty of that as well. But I would never ask you to do that.
You
So
did, and
there
I
you go.
haven't bloody done them either. You're like, after you've done your interval on the bike,
Oh, right,
I
yeah.
was like, good luck. You're thinking
Yeah, fair.
that?
Well,
They're fun.
I probably need to go adjust things. So there we go. How good. Well, let's talk about cardio then. So obviously, strength stuff really, really, really important. Cardio stuff, very, very important as well. So mountaineering is obviously an endurance activity. So we need to talk about this. So as we were sort of saying before, the way we're sort of looking at Allie's training, we got to sort of split between one longer cardio session a week and a shorter one that we can kind of fit in as well. Now, the longer cardio session, really, really simple. We're just going to do some running, which will probably vary depending on where Allie's in the country between just road running or trail running or whatever she has access to, in all honesty. When we're having a conversation, we'll sort of like just sort of say, hey, it's been a little while since you run. Arch is a little bit of a thing. Where do we sort of feel like right now? You can kind of start because Allie's, got a good judge of this. She sort of said, look, happy to try to start about 45, 60 minutes of running, actually, sort of what she was sort of thinking of. So because of the foot, because, Arch has been a little bit funny, we're like, look, let's just be conservative, sit on the lower end of that, start with 45 minutes, just see how that goes. It's pretty straightforward. It's very, very simple, but, that's how we went about it. The intention for the running is just basically bump it up each week we do. Just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Just keep on climbing that up. We'll see how the foot goes. You know, if it does end up being a bit stubborn, a bit tricky, we may have to adjust that, be a bit more complicated, maybe like lean into other things. But for now, we'll keep it simple, see how we go. Very, very simple. Now, on the shorter cardio, so the session is going to be a little bit shorter. You know, we're going to be leaning into some cycling intervals. So realistically, because Allie's only got, you know, a small amount of time in the week to train, some people would sort of say, hey, second session in a week, you know, just go do another run and just do two of those and keep it like in a low steady state. But realistically, I think it's probably very, very valuable for her to get exposure to higher intensity stuff right away because we get a lot of work done in a short amount of time with some intervals. So we're doing some intervals on the bike. The way we're approaching it is a lot of people think when we say interval training, they think, okay, I'm going to do 20-second intervals or 30-second intervals or 40-second intervals, right? And just go really, 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 really quick and there's super high intensity stuff. That place has the stuff has its place in certain things, but for our respects, long intervals for mountaineers, for the majority, is probably going to be a little bit more relevant. And if we can do things 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever it may be, that in itself is going to be a little bit more relevant in different ways. In all honesty, I like this because it's a good way to challenge the body at high levels of aerobic work, which is obviously when we're mountaineering, going for long periods of time, that's our aerobic energy system going for long periods of time. With this sort of longer intervals, you can challenge that particular energy system just for longer periods, you know, sustain those longer things for a while. Very, very simple, but I find that works out pretty well. Now, this particular session, we could do this running. A lot of people will do these sort of longer interval sessions running and really, really push themselves. But the tricky thing with that, again, we're looking at personal considerations. We want to be conservative with the foot. Quicker running, harder running can sometimes be a bit of an aggravator for pre-existing, you know, discomforts. For these sessions, we just wanted to push it, just go quick, not have to worry about things. So we're going to do it on the bike, keep it simple. Now, plan to progress, very, very simple for this. For the running, really, really simple. We're just going to slowly build up volume, just build, 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 build. The way we are going to approach Allie's situation is basically just use her schedule and her energy to manage the load. So there's kind of a couple of different ways you can kind of go about periods of training. And previously, when I worked with her, Allie, in previous years, we've done periods where we're like, okay, we're going to build running for 3 weeks, have a week off or a week pulling back, and then build for 3 weeks, a week pulling back, and this and that. And we probably did that, you know, when we originally started training, whatever it may be. These days, we kind of take a bit more of a flexible approach because Allie is so busy and sometimes, and there's so much going on. We basically just say, we're going to keep on increasing until we need a rest. As simple as that. And there was a period last season where Allie sent me a message. I didn't communicate this so well.
6 days a week. And yeah, and I was so busy and I was training 6 days a week and I was doing hypoxic training as well. And Rowan just is like, yeah, now you're doing like 6 hours. Okay, next week you're doing 6.5 hours like on the trail. Week after you're doing anyway. I was like so exhausted this one week. I was like, dude, like, do I ever get a deload week? And you're like, oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And that was literally what we're waiting for because we're like, you know what, while the sounds good, we're going to make the most of it because I think that year she had a lot of travel and a lot of breaks in her schedule and this and that. So we're like, look, let's just keep on building until she says, I need a rest. So that's when we rested. So it works out well enough. For our respects, you know, with the cardio, eventually we probably will need to do a couple long hikes somewhere. The idea here is just basically expose the body to long days with a pack on the back because she's not guiding so much anymore. We're not really guiding anymore, not really getting that in her everyday week. So we still want to get a little bit of exposure to that. You know, we're probably not getting as long as summit day. It's not like we're going to go out and ask her to do a 24-hour hit out with that, but we're going to get some sort of decent long days. Going to keep that to a minimum so it doesn't drive her mental and this isn't super boring and taking up too much time, but we'll try to slip in there a little bit where we can, close towards the trip. We'll see how we go. Now, for the shorter cardio, essentially what we're going to look at there, like with the strength, we're going to progress that every 3 weeks. Sometimes we will just take the same workout, just adjust it. So we may adjust, you know, the interval structure. If we're doing 3-minute intervals, we may move up to 3.5-minute intervals. We may go a little bit shorter and just increase the speed or something like that. If we're doing walking sessions or hiking sessions, we may add a bit of pack weight, something like that. Sometimes we'll just swap things out for a completely different workout, whatever it may be. So each 3 weeks, we kind of decide, what do we really need at this stage and how's everything going in the long-term plan we got. For the bike intervals we have at the moment, we'll probably follow a plan of sort of saying, look, I'm going to stick with these intervals for a little while. Next phase we introduce, we may make them a little bit shorter and just bump up the intensity, or we may make them a little bit longer and just like maintain the same intensity, see how we go. Maybe progress them to running intervals, see how the foot goes and see how we go. And at some stage, we will introduce some stair hill repeats, leading into some pretty heavy hill climbs, which are the standards for mountaineers, and slip that in to watch it goes. So we'll make sure we're kind of getting a good exposure of everything. And the cardio, as I said, are much less than a typical mountaineer may be approaching, but that's kind of what we're going to be working with and see how we go. So, Ellie, anything you want to add on the cardio front?
Sometimes, so I've also got a road bike. So yeah, sometimes with the long sessions I've mixed it up, and I really only ride the road bike to ride hills. So I don't ride flat because yeah, I just get bored. So I pretty much pick like the steepest, longest hill and do laps on it. And yeah, so sometimes I'll mix the long sessions, like rather than run 5 hours, then I might do, yeah, like a 5 hour ride on the bike. And we also, by the time I'm doing that, I'm also doing loaded pack carrying, which you can, like, yeah, like I tend to do the loaded pack carrying. I don't know where I'll be, but on a hill where there's a creek at the bottom, and I fill up water bladders and then carry the pack up, and then dump the water, and like depending how long it is, because I think Rowan's probably normally we do like an hour to an hour and a half of that. And I try to get around 20 kilos in the pack, and I dump it at the top and then go back down with a light bag and then fill it up again. So just to get like, yeah, probably around hour and a half of uphill with the 20. And what else? I think that's it. Like, obviously, you don't have to run. Like, I trail run because I like running. I don't like hiking. But when I say trail running, it's actually run hike, because I run like the down and the flat and I hike the up. So it's kind of more like a run hike. And yeah, I just try to pick like really, like, well, if I'm here in the Blue Mountains, I'll just pick really long, like longer trails that go through the valleys and in and out of the valley kind of thing. Like they do on the Ultra Trail 100, which I've done. Yeah, that's it. But I don't run. I guess the important part is like I don't run fast, and that would be the main difference, because I have obviously trained for ultras as well, and that's a completely different thing to climbing an 8,000-meter mountain. So I'm trying to stay, if you know about zones, like I'm trying to stay in like zone 2 as opposed to going into zone 3. And that's pretty much like you can tell, because if you can't talk, then you've gone too high in your heart rate. So I try to keep it around zone 2 for that whole time when I'm building endurance. The other thing I'll say though, just now, you're talking cardio with diet, and this is not to do with the fitness, but I tend to only eat carbs when I'm on the mountain. I only eat carbs because I'm in Pakistan or I'm in Nepal and they literally only have carbs. But when I'm training, I pretty much only eat carbs, breakfast, lunch, and hardly any. And then I train and I just have protein and like salad or whatever at dinner. So when I'm out like hitting these big long run hikes, I'm only getting carbs then. So there's like a theory that actually does work behind this, to be training my body to at high altitude use the fat more as energy. And yeah, and it does work. Honestly, it does work. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah,
Because people are
absolutely.
like, you've gone for like 8 hours and you've eaten like 3 muesli bars. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm not hungry and I'm fine and I did it and I don't feel spaced out, like, because I'm used to that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic, and we could probably do a whole hour talking about that type of thing. That and yeah, and when we're kind of looking at, I guess from a coaching perspective, when we're looking at different clients, different mountains, different climbs, this situation, she's obviously got these massive summit days where she's up there, she's in the
I
gear,
don't
she's moving around. Yeah, she can't move. Like everything freezes, big gloves, all of that jazz. Eating's realistically, yeah, not going to happen. For other mountaineers who may be doing something that's maybe not, quite as intense or quite as cold or quite as whatever it may be, their strategy may be like, look, actually, eat more and focus on that. So it's a kind of very, very case by case individual thing. Again, if you follow the World Training for Mountaineering, you'll see a lot of discussion on this at the moment from different people and a lot of debate, but realistically, lots of different schools of thought, but it can work if you do it right. It can not work if you do it wrong. Just make sure you're doing what works best for you. That's what
Yeah,
I'm going to say.
you've
So,
really got to listen to your body on it for sure. Yeah, because I've done it over a lot of years now. And when I've done testing, like specific testing on fat burning, I do burn fat pretty well. Like, and I think that's because I've been doing this kind of thing for so long. So it's not for everyone. So please, I'm just telling my story, just sharing my story. Yeah, and it's a hard one, because like if you are climbing 8,000-meter mountains, people don't talk about this stuff, and it's super important because you don't get to drink enough up there. And if you train like drinking 10 liters of water, when you're on the mountain, your body just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. So yeah, that's something that's important to know. Chat to me in an email if you're interested in that stuff. Because yeah, if you're serious about climbing Everest, for example, you're pretty much dehydrated the entire time. So if you're training like super hydrated all the time, then it's not good.
the fun of the big mountains, hey?
Well, that's what
Oh,
we're here
good.
to talk about.
That's it. That's it. All right. Well, let's. How are we doing for time? Oh, cool. Let
Not
me
long.
zip through the rest. I'm doing all right. So, let's move on to, we haven't got too much more to get through. Let's move on to recovery mobility. So basically, in amongst that, training hard, pretty important. Strength, cardio, really, really, really valuable. For all our clients, we like to put a little bit of thread of recovery mobility stuff in there. Realistically, some people will really, really need mobility or flexibility or however you want to term it. Some people won't need it a huge amount depending on the type of person, but everyone will get some benefit of just doing something which can help the body just calm down, just relax in between sessions and feel good. So typically the way we approach things, at least for Ali, is we keep a little stretching and self-massage routine in the mix for about 20 minutes, which you can kind of just use whenever she wants. Essentially, this just works through just some simple exercises, nothing too crazy, which we can work through. Now, on top of that, like if there are situations where she's like, hey, you know what, I did this weekend, my quads are cooked, or, my calves are cooked, or something's going on, then we can use a case by case basis of just adding in little bits and pieces if we need, if she already had a to present herself. We can kind of use mobility exercise, a little bit of a thread there if we need. If we really do need at any stage, if there are sort of periods where like, oh, we're just really, really sitting on that balance and not really on the verge of just doing too much and not feeling good. We can lean into other recovery stuff. Previously in other years, we've sort of done like, pole walking, which I know you didn't love. Up in Blackheath Pool, I think we did some like gentle cycling sessions at a certain stage. We don't really do so much of that anymore. Like, in all honesty, just sort of seeing what Ali's
Oh,
got going on.
I used to swim laps as a resting kind of day type thing.
Yeah. Up in the freezing pool up in Blackheath. So, but realistically, we don't program a huge amount of this anymore. Like Ali's got lots of cool stuff going on in her life where she's exploring different things. Realistically, for recovery mobility, recovery stuff, you can get really, really technical with this stuff. But anything that really calms the body down, chills it out, relaxes it, makes you feel good, works pretty well for this respect. Mobility, obviously, if we're trying to actively improve mobility, we probably need to do stuff for that. But outside of that, if we're just talking about recovery, a lot of it, you can keep it really, really simple. So we keep it simple in our respects. So any questions, comments, well, not questions, Hallie, any comments or notes about that?
I'm like, yeah, like I don't get to do it enough because I'm moving around a lot, but cold plunge is awesome. And yeah, when I'm in Nepal, like if a massage is great. And look, I meditate every morning and every night, and like if you have a calm mindset, then that's going to help with, like, honestly, that's going to help with recovery, because if you're like stressed out, then I think it affects, well, not I think, it affects your nervous system, and that's going to make it harder to recover anyway. So the more you can train your mind to be relaxed and not stressed, the more benefit you're going to get from your training. Always. You're going to get better sleep, so you're going to recover better as well. So that's why I focus heavily on mindset. It is a habit for me every day.
Absolutely. And
we all know like how it sucks to get like 5 hours sleep, right? So yeah, if you can look after that, the mental side, then that's going to enable you to also not like stress about fitting workouts in and everything. And in fact, if you don't have a strong mindset, then you can't climb a mountain, full stop. Because when it's tough and there's a storm and you've got to get to the next camp and you've got to keep going up, or on summit day where, like I did, went for 29 hours above 7,500 meters, and you've got to get back to the tent or you die. If you don't have a strong mindset, you can't be there. So that's like Rowan's talking about all of this program, but there's a whole nother schedule that I add to all of this, which is my mindset practices.
Yeah, 100%. And stuff that obviously we don't have time to cover today, but like if you were going to put together a little Venn diagram in regards to, like, those Venn diagrams where we've got our three circles and they're kind of overlapping. We're looking at, like,
I'm writing a book,
realistically.
everybody. I'm writing a book. It's called, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but it should be out by April, and it's all about mindset. Mindset.
I like that. I like that. And yeah, and I was going to say that, like, if we were looking at a Venn diagram, we got training as one component of that. Nutrition is probably one component of that, and mindset is another component. All very, very, very crucial for this stuff. And then obviously when we talk about mountaineers, we've got the whole technical side of things, which I think we've got a question on that as well, which I'm sure Allie will cover in a second. But yeah, so let me wrap things up and zip through this. So step number 4, that's the sort of rough plan for now. Things will always change through the process. Sickness will come up, work will come up, weather, energy, motivation, engagement, of just, like, being sort of in the zone for training, whatever it may be. All of these things do come up in a training process, which can kind of get in the way. So realistically, to work around this, we just keep in regular contact. So most of our clients that we work with, have pretty weekly touch points and probably a couple of weekly touch points. For Allie and I, we've been working together for so long, we're a little bit more hands off. She lets me know when she needs a hand, and I don't hassle her too much amongst her busy schedule. But basically, we just keep things flexible around what's going on. If she comes to me and she says, look, you know what, I'm going to be somewhere and it's going to be torrential storms for a week or two, then we work around that, we adjust. If, we go through that low period of energy, then we're like, look, maybe we want to pull things back. If, I'm sick, then, what can we do around that? How can we promote our recovery? Whatever it may be. So we keep things flexible around it all. In all honesty, when it comes down to training for mountaineering, A lot of people say, look, there's only one way to do it, but in all honesty, there's many roads to Rome. There's many roads to the top of the mountain, many roads with training. Obviously, there's certain things you have to do and certain similarities, but everyone is going to be a little bit different. Everyone's journey is going to be a little bit different. You just want to make sure you're doing what's right for you. Now, a little bit of summary before I wrap things up. Overall, as I said before, Allie's preparations are going to look pretty different to a lot of mountaineers out there. Typically, for someone watching this, if you were looking at it, it's a good bare bones, not bare bones, a good framework to follow. But for most mountaineers, we would probably say, hey, you probably want to be doing a little bit more time investment in regards to cardio. But we set out these considerations. Obviously, that's what we're looking at. And yeah, as I said, because of our coaching relationship, our history, and kind of knowing where we're at, I'm confident this is going to be a good balance for her. And in all honesty, I'm looking forward to seeing some cool successes in 2025. So just to wrap things up, if anyone's watching this in the future, looking for a little bit of extra help with their training, if you want a bit of help with your preparation, got a big adventure yourself, I would love to chat with you. As I said before, I offer personalized training programs for hikers and mountaineers, helping get fit, strong, resilient for their adventures. Typically, our packages, what we'll include is a custom and personalized workout plan to get you ready for as much as the mountain as we can, and anything the mountain may throw at you, covering all the things we talked about today in a way that's personalized for you. We'll also put a big emphasis into the peripheral factors which can make and break an adventure, nutrition, recovery, self-care, mental strength, and a bunch of other things, and also give you the coaching support and accountability to keep you on track through all the ups and downs and whatever's going on. Now, if you want to check that out, want to learn a little bit more, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/mountaineer. On that page, there's a little bit of video, talks through our program, how it sort of works, and this and that. And if it does that sound like something you want to explore a little bit more, there's a link on that page. You'll book a call with our team. You can sit down and have a bit of a chat, hear a little about your story, your situation, and ultimately see if it's something that we might be able to help you with. So summitstrength.com.au/mountaineer if you want to check it out. But that's everything I wanted to cover today. So I will lose my share screen. And I'll let Allie I think we got a question from Jital. So I'll let Allie cover that one before we wrap up.
Yeah. So Jital has asked, for those that are watching this later, I recently summited Mirror Peak. Congratulations. And it's basically a trekking peak. Yeah. But it's still a peak. And if I want to do more technical peaks, how do I train myself to work with the Juma, which is an ascender? That's what I was talking about before. And rope management skills. Living in Sydney, does rock climbing help, or should I go for a mountaineering course? So this is awesome. And when I was a guide and I had my own business, I trained you specifically for this. But I don't do it anymore. I used to have a rock, like a course on the rock up here to train these skills, but never fear. So in terms of like the rock skills, 100% rock climbing in the outdoors is going to help. So it's going to help with exposure, as well as just general roping skills. The Juma, however, I would recommend if you go to Blue Mountains Climbing School, so write that down, Blue Mountains Climbing School. They've got a lot of my gear. After I stopped guiding, I gave it to them. Now, if you just say, like, I want to learn how to use the Juma and call them, like, what course should I do? I would say probably the course that they would get you to do would be a bit of a rope rescue course. And essentially all these skills are rope rescue skills. And that's what I used to teach. So I used to teach a whole day of rope rescue skills and using a Juma and rope management. But they do that. They do teach rope rescue skills, abseiling skills, using a prusik, which is something that you want to know how to do. Abseiling with a prusik, rescuing yourself, all of these things I do and I've had to do, and I've had to do for other people, especially on Everest, that don't have these skills. So I recommend doing that. And in terms of building up, so yeah, if you're interested to like the next level in terms of Nepal, like the peak that is like the piece de la resistance, I don't speak French, is amas de blanc. And amas de blanc is a lot of technical roping skills. You are constantly using the Duma. You are Dumaing up steep rock, as well as very narrow ridges, and as well as climbing on snow. And that is a very good training peak for Everest in terms of going through the icefall and up the Lhotse face, and yeah, having the skills to be able to do it. So what's a little bit easier than that is L'Auberge. So what I've recommended to my friend who is going to climb Everest, and I've trained her in all of these rock skills up here in the Blue Mountains, is to, and I've also taken her to Island Peak before, is to go to her and her friend actually going to climb Everest together. So when I go again, and they're going to do L'Auberge Peak first to acclimatize, and then they're going to climb Amas de Blanc. Before that, I've got to do a bit of fun stuff with them on the rock up here so that they can remember what they're doing. So that would be, like I said, go for a day, even if it's a one-on-one with a Blue Mountains, what do I call them? Climbing school, not adventure company, just so you know. Blue Mountains Climbing School. Ask them. They're in Blackheath. Their names are, I've had a mind blank. Sorry, I've had a mind blank. Hugh and Bridie. Ask those beautiful people. Pay for a one-on-one, so you only do all the things that you really need, and then yeah. So can we unmute Jahal? Is that all right? Just so I can so she can chat just quickly. There we go.
Hey, Allie. Hi.
Hello. How did that
I'm so
sound?
grateful that, yeah, very good, very good. I mean, when you mentioned Amas de Blanc, I remember doing EBC and looking at Amas de Blanc and thinking, oh, maybe this, I dream of, climbing this peak one day. But yeah, I mean, Mera was great, but, I very quickly realized that, I mean, they gave us a day of training and that wasn't enough. Yeah, if I was to actually use the skills on a real mountain, in high altitude, I would not remember any of that. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think that's where I was coming from. So, I will definitely look this up. I had seen another place also in the Blue Mountains. I think they call Australian School of Mountaineering, but maybe that's a different one.
Yeah. So
it's okay. You don't have to.
Can I don't want to put you on the spot. Go to the other one and just leave it.
No, that's very helpful. Okay. Great information.
Yeah, just because I know what they know, and I know that.
Yeah.
But if you're considering doing a mountaineering course, because I also used to run mountaineering courses down at Blue Lake in the winter. So my friends climbing the 7 summits, though they also guide Everest, they have an alpine academy.
Yes,
at Blue Lake, and that is also a good idea. So that's another thing that you can do in Australia. That's not the big expense of going to Nepal and buying the plane ticket and blah blah blah. And you're camping in the snow and learning crampon skills, ice axe skills, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for the information.
My pleasure. Did anyone have any other question before we finish up? Or want to say something? Just write in the chat box, me, and then Rowan can unmute you. No?
Chill.
Okay.
Super easy.
Awesome.
Well, I'll just sort of say for anyone watching this in the future, if any questions do pop up, if there's any training related questions, feel free to reach out to me. If there's any, obviously more mountaineering related questions, reach out to Allie. We're here, more happy to have a chat. But thank you for the guys who are here live. I really, really appreciate you hopping on and spending your Monday evening chatting about this. Thank you, Ali, for getting me involved with this and getting me give me a chance to talk about all this. Because as you can tell, I love talking about it. And yeah, and I hope a lot of people enjoy it both now and in the future with the recording.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.